Hello and welcome everyone to the evaluation of I believe it was the fourth playtest, may have been the fifth playtest, I think it was the fourth, of my Memoir 44 double breakthrough map scenario called Force versus Finesse on the Battle of Dubno Brody. And as you can see, this one was really very, very close. The Germans won by 24-22, and it really came down to, obviously it always comes down to the last turns in Memoir, but things were really tight for much of the late game. So it was a lot of fun, and it could have gone either way. The Germans made some mistakes. The Soviets made some mistakes, which is of course always possible. I mean, nobody ever really plays perfectly, I suppose. So I'll go into a couple of those things as well. As you can see, actually the one that got the win for the Germans was, funnily enough, this unit in the rear. This one was still available to the Germans at the time of speaking, and because they never entered it, they just bypassed it, and that's actually a good strategy. I didn't do it intentionally, but it's actually not a bad idea to leave a few medals open for the taking in the rear, because you can move in safely and take it when it really matters rather than at the beginning of the game. So they had left this one, and now this one simply moved in, and that was actually the 24th victory point for the Germans. I didn't actually play the last card, which was move out. Well, I did obviously, but because I moved in that particular unit, which I could have done with it on the move or something as well, which was the result of the ground reinforcements die roll. But on the other map, for instance, I played an artillery bombard for the Germans as the last card, but I didn't actually go ahead with it anymore. I might have killed that unit and gotten in yet another victory point for the Germans, but it didn't matter because they already won. Note that the town of Lutsk was last occupied by the Soviets. There used to be a KV-1 in there, but it was destroyed, but the Germans weren't able to move in. I believe it was also this unit that finally did the trick. It was completely surrounded at a certain moment, but and all those tanks attacked it, but obviously they did so at -2 dice for the tag being inside the town hex. And finally this one managed to deal with it, but then of course those units couldn't move in, and funnily enough the Germans didn't have a card either to do so, and even though they did get a reinforcement, they didn't actually get a flag, which would have allowed them to move in here as well. Then they would have had 25 victory points. Of course it wouldn't have mattered, 24 is enough for the win, but they would have had one more, but that explains why they don't have it. This is a pontoon bridge the Germans built at a certain moment, so as to not be solely dependent on the town of Lutsk, which is difficult to pass through. Once you move in with a tank unit, you can't fire, or even if you move in with an infantry unit, so it's really open to counterattack. And as you can see, the Russians are actually pretty strong on this board. Look at everything they've got over here. So had the game lasted longer, and perhaps had the Russians been a bit more aggressive as well, because of course, as you can see, if the game were to last longer, they probably would be able to repulse the Germans again because they have stronger forces here. But yeah, let's just say that in the actual battle as well, the reconnaissance on the part of the Russians wasn't very good. Communication was poor. They didn't have much of an air force at that time left in the air because, many of the reconnaissance planes were shot down by the Luftwaffe, which really had air superiority. So, it can be explained away, and as I said, it's even historically accurate to say that, okay, even though the Russians did have powerful forces in several places, communications were bad, and they didn't actually know the German positions all that well. So I guess it could be explained away that way, and it even makes sense. Speaking of air superiority, that's another small rule I've added, and that's a standard Memoir 44 rule. I mean, there's a card for it. I believe it's Actions 34, which means that the Germans get to roll 2 dice when they play an air power card, or in this case also a Recon 1 card, which allows the Germans to do just that, and the Soviets roll just one die. So that's for the air superiority. Let's see. This is a pontoon bridge which wasn't actually built, but the Germans did have a card and they wanted to build it for a while, but in the end they kept on playing other cards and they didn't actually get around to doing it. But that would have been an option too. It would have opened up this avenue as well, and that way bypassing the town. An even better option would have been over here perhaps. But the Germans didn't have a lot of forces there at the time. Well, this is of course not a good option because you still end up on the same side. This would have been a much better place, but then they would have needed an attack card on the other board, which I believe they never actually had on that side. They did have one for this side of the board, of the right board. So this was one that was actually never built. This is just something, this is a unit I could have ordered with the last card, even though it didn't make any difference anymore because the Germans are already pulled out the win. But with the move out card, I could have moved this unit into here. Obviously it wouldn't have been able to fire, but that wouldn't have been tactically a very good idea the way the situation is now, because this unit would have been able to fire at it, and I mean that would be at even odds because they would both be firing one die. Because, you know, 3, 2 minus 1 is 1, and the other way around as well for the town hex. But of course, with all these units here, the tank would have been able to target it with one die as well. Another tank might have moved up over here and targeted it as well. Of course, yeah, and that one would actually be shielded from a lot of the German fire because of this woods hex over here. So that's why I didn't do that. This is a bridge that the Russians actually built pretty early on during the game, which allowed them to move all the armor that they start with over here. It's spread out by now, but and some of them were destroyed by Luftwaffe attacks. But it enables the Russians another avenue of approach towards Brody. A similar option would have existed for the Germans over here had they built one, which they could have done at a certain time. But at that time, the Germans were actually pretty weak on this side, so that's why they didn't do it. But that would be a good place for the Germans to build a pontoon bridge as well on the left-hand board. Now, is there anything else I should cover for now? I don't really think so. So, yeah, I do believe the scenario is as balanced as it can get. It was still a German win, but as I said, well, this is, for instance, I didn't mark it, but for a very long time this infantry unit was in Dubno. I should have moved up some more infantry or other units that are actually over here. Well, a bit difficult to spot because of the cards, or I could have placed them over here as well, and I should have moved those up to Dubno and passed these on for a counterattack against Berestechko, which would have gotten the Russians back potentially, maybe not for long, but it would have made it easier to contest that village and that medal. And obviously they should have moved more units up, but they were content in just defending this town. But at a certain moment it became pretty obvious that the Germans weren't going to break through there really, and they wouldn't have been able to break through here anymore either. The tank destroyer unit, this is actually a fantastic place for it because it's got a range of fire of an effective firing range of 4 hexes and fires 2, 2, 2, 2, and it can actually, if it doesn't move, it can ignore any terrain die reduction, so it just fires 2 normally into the town. It can really reach up to here on the other board as well. It can fire up to here as well, so this is really a fantastic place for it because of course any unit firing at it does get, well, any tank unit firing at it does see its own dice reduced by 2. So, yeah, again, this is a fantastic place for a tank destroyer unit, which the Russians got because of a ground reinforcement die roll. Is there anything else I should point out? Well, as I was saying, over here as well, the Russians could have been a bit more aggressive earlier on. They have so many troops, but yeah, then they chose to move other units or use an on the move for another unit, or fire with another unit if they could have done so here. And yeah, as you can see, they are very, very strong here, but still it resulted in a German win, which is fine. I mean, the Russians really need to seize the moment, and as I mentioned earlier, there is a way in which you can actually explain that this did turn out to be a German win. Had the Russians had the right cards at the right moment, things might have gone differently. Had they had an armor assault card or something like that, and the Germans had one at a moment that it really mattered, and they didn't. Yeah, so really enjoyable. I do believe that the current version of the scenario is the best one, and that there is not much that I can do to make it even better or even more balanced. I mean, it's balanced enough if the victory conditions are just 2 points of a difference at this particular time. And as I said, there were things that the Russians could have and should have done differently. Well, one thing that did happen is I could have, of course, also captured this town hex, as I explained earlier on in this video, much earlier on. And actually, at a certain moment, it would have made a difference between the Russians getting 7 reinforcement dice for the ground reinforcements or 4. And in this scenario, it never happened. But had the Germans captured it earlier on, that might have made a difference. Still, that is absolutely true. Yeah, but I still think the scenario is quite well balanced. If the Russians build a bridge here, as they actually did, they can actually go for a counterattack here. I do believe they've been playing overall too defensively, and yeah, if they can be more aggressive, I actually do believe it's possible for the Russians to win as well. So I hope you've been enjoying my playthrough sessions and my evaluations as well. I might do a short strategy video still, and in about 1.5 weeks I've got a game planned with a friend, and I'll see how that one turns out. But yeah, I'm actually pretty happy, and after I've played it with my friend, I'll post the scenario on Board Game Geek, and once the scenario editor is ever up again, I'll post it on the what used to be the Days of Wonder website as well, so the Memoir 44 website. And if you ever get to play it, let me know how it went. Thank you very much for watching.